Hi everyone, Emily Detweiler here, and I decided to go ahead and tackle observations as one of our data collection techniques talked about in the Mills book in Chapter 5. So I'm going to go ahead and take you through and answer all the questions that Ali suggested that we go through. So how would you describe this data collection technique? I described observations as not time-consuming. Observations is part of the normal routine. It's a continuous technique. It can be intentional where you are looking for specific things depending on what you're using in your research, and it helps to fix or thwart problems. You can see, personally, I am observing my students all day, every day, and I think that's what we do as teachers, and that's one of the quickest ways that we are able to help our students become better and to help our teaching become better. And we're able to fix the problems right there, or if it's something that we take home or we look during a time that we have just to reflect and see what we can do better. And so observations is really great to have that in your research if that's something that is able to be included. So what process and procedures are unique to this technique? So in the Mills textbook in Chapter 5, there were 3 different types of observers that they described about. The first one was the participant observer, and this is just where the teacher or the researcher is engaged in observing the activities that the students are completing. A privileged observer observes another teacher with students, and this would be if you would go to your specials or to a learning support classroom and you're watching your student with another teacher. You're just seeing what they're doing and how the students are reacting. You're not necessarily engaging as much as a participant observer would, but you're just trying to see how the student, certain students would act with another teacher. And of the passive observer, you're only there to observe and not engage. So I didn't know that there were different types of observation before reading this chapter, so that was really interesting to me, especially because in my specific research, I'm probably going to be using observation a lot. This is important to me personally because I need to know these 3 things in order to incorporate in my research. But the passive observer is only there to observe and not engage. And so they're strictly there to watch and record what the students are doing, what they're working on. Which was also explained in the Mertler text, that you're carefully watching and recording what you see and hear. Another process and procedure that I thought was unique to the observation was the triangulation method. I included this picture because I think it's important to see how observation really plays into quantitative and qualitative data. While it's mostly qualitative, and I'll get to that, you can see in this triangle method that it kind of goes hand in hand with all of these things, and I think observation, you're looking what you're seeing, but then that also affects, okay, what does the student work tell me, and how can I how can I change up my assessments and tests, which you're taking the quantitative data for that, and what are my students telling me, so different through interviewing and journaling. So I included the triangulation method because I thought that was important as an important procedure, because it also helps with the credibility and the validity, which I also get to. So like I said, this observation is a qualitative technique, and I went and described qualitative data as per all the articles that were included. It said that qualitative data can be described as descriptive narrative accounts. Mertler described it as that, and Nugent et al. Described it as its quality and descriptions. And Mills also described qualitative, it can be in non-written forms, which sometimes observations are like that. You're just observing, not necessarily recording. Sometimes you are, but sometimes you're just looking and seeing what the students are doing. Some questions that would be best answered. The triangulation method. What do I see? What am I seeing in my students, and what are they doing with the research and the activities that I have planned? Mills also said, what is going on here, which is kind of like the first one as well, but I'm trying to see, okay, what is going on in this specific area that I'm trying to research? And I also thought of my own personal question, what can I change about in my instruction based on student performance? And I think that's a continuous formative assessment that I'm always using with my students. I'm observing and seeing, okay, are they learning doubles facts? Are they learning making combinations of 10? If not, what do I need to do on the spot to change my instruction to help them understand the concept a little more? And I think, again, that's why observations are so important, and it's so important as educators to be aware of where our students are and how they are doing. So some strengths that I found with the observation data collection technique, Nugent et al. Describes it helps to gain understanding of people's thoughts, actions, and views, and you definitely can see how people are, how your students are doing by observing and just watching and not jumping in, not redirecting, and just seeing where they take it. Sometimes I learn a lot from my second graders, and it's a lot of fun to see their brains working through a problem, and it's really great to also highlight how different our thinking is too. Another strength is it's a normal component of teaching, so it is not time consuming. Mills always said that we're always observing and we're always walking around watching our students and seeing what we can do to change things up. And also, it helps in different ways to show interaction and communication with students. And there's flexibility through observation because you're able to be changing things up, and it's not a strict regimen of sticking to, okay, I need to stick to this assessment, I need to stick to these questions that are being asked. Observation provides flexibility that you're able to work with your students or to change things up in the moment if need be. Some weaknesses. Obviously, it does not provide numerical data because it's qualitative. The slightest imprecision of data could lead to inaccurate or misleading data, according to Mertler, which is correct, and it also has to do with some bias. You really have to I feel that you have to take bias. You have to be unbiased with observation, and you just have to be recording what you're seeing and what you're hearing. It can also be seen as unreliable if it's not conducted properly. A weakness is it does take time to observe students and what is going on in the classroom versus giving a quick test or a quick assessment to assess what they understand and then gathering that data. Observation takes time to really understand the thought process behind the students' thinking and to hear what they're doing and to actually see and record that. So those are some of the weaknesses. I don't know if anyone else has found any or has some experience with weaknesses, but I would love to know if you do. And then some concerns I have about this data collection technique from a validity, reliability, and ethical perspective. So from a validity perspective would be trustworthiness, which I said as a weakness. The accuracy and believability of the data. We really need to try to take the bias out of it. Observation and just really focus on what we see and hear. And I know sometimes that's really hard because we see some students and we know their history and background, but yet we have to take that out. Reliability, I think I'm correct with this, was more towards quantitative, so I inserted credibility and dependability since that had to do with qualitative data. And some concerns are you really need to establish credible and believable results from a perspective of the participant in the research. So you really just need to stick to, I think a concern would be just sticking to what you're doing and not bringing too much influence from the outside world into your research. And also research needs to account for the changing context. Concern would be, you're observing, but are you changing what you're doing in order to help your students? Are you changing it up, or are you just letting it be, even though that's not good because things are always changing, different needs and different wants in our children and our students. From an ethical perspective, I think it would depend on whoever's participating in the study. I think there could be specific concerns to whoever's participating, but these change constantly. My second grade students, but I know a lot of people in this class are high school teachers, they're middle school teachers, they're different areas, and so I think the ethical perspective really depends on who we are assessing and who we are observing. So that's just a little bit about observations, and here are my references. Thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing your videos this week.